Have you ever noticed when discussing sexual assault, people just completely lose their unique voice? Like everyone just uses the same 5, 10 words. It's like, allegedly, she claimed, the accuser, the alleged, the allegation. It's a mess. And since the rise of Me Too, I've noticed another phrase that's been used a lot more, credibly accused. And I have a problem with the whole credibly accused phrase because we know through all the research that there is a connection between the rhetoric that we use, our attitudes about sexual violence, and then how we treat survivors or address it in the real world. But before I dive in, I just have to say, I hate the word accused, accuser, just like flat out. One, it makes the victim's identity about them speaking up rather than what was done to them. Also, if you look up the history of accuse, accuser, there's a history of misogyny. Surprise, surprise, patriarchy. But that will be a video for another day. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Adding credibility as a qualifier is particularly problematic if you are a survivor or want to be an ally to survivors. Adding that adjective buys into the rape myth that people make up being raped all the time. Also, I really believe that a lot of people who are using this phrase haven't really thought about what does credibility even mean. Its widespread use actually helps rape culture because it's normalizing the use of white supremacist and patriarchal framing to talk about sexual violence. Credibility is a social construct. And the way that credibility has been socially constructed, it is inherently a political term. So what do I mean by social construct? Well, thinking about this, social constructs do have material impact on people's lives. Just like race is a social construct and clearly it has an impact. Gender is a social construct, clearly has an impact. Essentially, social constructions are invented by society. Their meanings are created by social thought and social relations. Things that are socially constructed don't have a set fixed meaning. It's not objective or inherent, and it doesn't have a fixed value. Since society created that social construct, they can manipulate it whenever they want, or even just like abandon it at will. What we deem credible is actually a nebulous concept and it's left up to individuals' discretion. But what's important to point out is that the most dominant interpretations of what credibility even means are used to uphold white supremacy and patriarchy. And through upholding white supremacy and patriarchy, it also upholds rape culture. Because remember, the history of rape cannot be separated from the history of racism in the United States. When it comes to sexual assault or anything in the legal system, think about the type of people who are deemed the least credible. Disabled people, sex workers, trans people, Black women, children, poor people. These are all folks who are sexually assaulted the most. Sexually assaulted at the highest rate, but are often the most invisible. That is by design. Especially when it comes to sexual assault, the law does not function as a social mediator of relations between all people. Instead, it is a tool that merely functions to protect the more privileged. For women, those who meet the requirements of hegemonic femininity, which includes being white, middle class, heterosexual, and able-bodied. The language of credibility and the concept of credibility comes from the legal system. And this reflects the larger trap that survivors and anti-rape advocates fall into when we're using the language of the law. We're also using the language of the patriarchy and white supremacy. This is why feminists say that the legal system is not the answer to rape culture, because the way that legal system responds to victims is actually about how much the victim conforms to gender roles. One easy way to chip away at rape culture is to challenge the language we've been taught to use around it. Reject the rhetoric we've been taught by the patriarchy. We challenge the basic assumptions that rape culture has told us. We will get closer to creating movements that are inclusive of all survivors, especially the most vulnerable.